Hey.
Kelly Miller.
Can you tell how chilly I am here in PA?
Just how cold is it in PA?
A good chilled night tonight. Nice fall evening.
Well, what do you got planned there, Miss Miller? A little toddy waddy and a little time with the puppies and just staying warm.
A little fuzzy blanket time with the dogs. So
okay, I'm on the way over. Nice. I'll be there in about 4 hours.
Nice cozy evening.
Yeah. Oh, hello, my chilly friends. Hi, Robin. Aww. Yeah, it's actually that way here. It's like wet and rainy. It feels like Chicago. What is Chicago?
Yeah.
I got some nice people coming in there. Man, I tell you what, I'm really blessed to have the loving friends that I do that have been following up on me. I that have been asking about me, and we've had some time where we had to take a time out, and I'm thankful to have the friends that I do that understand. But I got that sick. And it's a good thing I've lost a lot of weight, but I had to go down a dark path to get there. But hey, I'm alive. I'm here. I get to, I said anything, I got to come back and hang out with Kelly. If I die, then y'all are going to be going, Keith, can you hear us? Acknowledge us and light this light up. Hey, right. Kelly. We're going to use your on the show, Kelly.
We're going to use your own equipment.
Friends, Robin, Kel. So, but I am excited because I'm going to tell you what we've got tonight. A guy who I kind of communicated with for a very long time. In another venture in another years, and then also had been doing the same thing with him on several of his journey on his he's been doing with his weight loss and everything else, and just such a nice guy. I got to meet him at the Bash last year, and I told a lot of people out, and I'm when I say this, I don't hold back. I really wanted to go there to get to meet him and shake his hand and just reach out to him. What a nice guy he is. It's very cool. There's John. John's going to put some stuff in the oven. It's dinner time. He just got in. And so, we're very, very fortunate to have him on the show because this guy is loved by lots and lots of people. He's the same guy that will, say, hey guys, and shake your hand and, show love. But he's kind of the no BS guy either. He'll tell you, if you don't like how it is, go eat a sandwich. So I think that was one of his joking rows. So I'll tell you what, without further ado, the man known by many, loved by thousands, and watched and loved on his show, Spooky South Coast. Please help welcome to the show, Tim, the Wise Man Weisberg. Your volume's off, Tim. Your volume. His volume.
Do that. Radio guy, you think I know how to press the button.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for coming on with us.
Hey, thanks for having me. For a minute there, until Keith said Spooky South Coast, I thought you guys were talking about a different Tim Weisberg. Maybe the flute player that won all those Grammys in the 70s.
No.
No.
You got to know Tim's got us, and he has the very coolest little. This guy can nail you and throw a nail at you and do this to you, and you don't even know you've been hit by this Tim grenade. And he says, well, how'd that work out for you? Well, there you go. Just a loving, cool, fun, happy, cool, and cosmic kind of guy. So I got to tell you, let's dive into this and take us back. I was Tim Weisberg, born a small child in a small town. Tell us about yourself and, kind of where you came from and what you got going on.
Well, I've lived on the south coast of Massachusetts my entire life. And that's why we're Spooky South Coast, by the way. It's the South Coast of Massachusetts. But from a very young age, I started having weird things going on. And then when I was like 11, 12 years old, my aunt and uncle moved into a haunted house right in the heart of the Bridgewater Triangle. Although I didn't know about the Bridgewater Triangle at that time, I did realize that their place was definitely haunted. And that kind of started me on this journey of wanting to learn more about it. And then in 2006, well, actually 2005, I'd been doing a radio show on WBSM, a sports show, and the program director asked me if I wanted to do another show, and I said, yeah, I'd love to do a paranormal show. And thus Spooky South Coast was born, and we're just about ready to celebrate our 18th anniversary. It was actually 18 years ago this month I got the call saying, do you want to do another show? And I said, yes, I do, and I want to talk about ghosts and aliens and stuff.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations. 18 years. That's a huge accomplishment.
The show is now legal. I'm going to kick it out of the house and make it go live on its own and see how it likes it.
And see how it likes it.
Yeah,
well, that's great. Wow, that's awesome.
You don't hear about that too much. 18 years, gee whiz.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so one of the things that really intrigued me about you when I met you and so forth is that you get the Tim kind of on the radio show, but I think you love to get out and go and investigate with the folks as much as anyone. In fact, I think when I was in Gettysburg, I'd come over and we were going to invite you to go with us to one of the bridges. And next thing I hear, oh, he's gone. He's with some. I was like, well, cool. I'm glad he's out investigating. I didn't want you to be left out. But how did that how did that investigation go? I mean, I think from what I understand, you got to go to some pretty cool places.
Well, we did. I mean, I was fortunate that I was there with my friends Stephanie Burke and Scott Porter, stars of the new show Secrets of the Asylum, streaming now on Fox Nation. You guys owe me $5 each for the plug. So they said they'd been there before, and they said, we're going to bring you around with our friends and show you some of these places that are kind of off the beaten path. And it took me, to some landmarks that people would want to go to as well. And we had the coolest experience in my mind at the Bloody Wheat Fields, where we stepped out of the car. It's a 90-degree day in the middle of July. Sun is blazing. And as we started walking through the field from about knee height down, it was just ice cold. And I had a millimeter with me, so I pulled that out and held that down. And sure enough, we were getting a much colder reading, probably 10, 15 degrees colder down by our legs. And really what might be causing that? The only thing that I could think of is that it might be, that's how high the bodies were stacked up with the thousands of people that were killed on that field. So that was a really cool experience. And then we did run into you on the bridge. So you were in the middle of filming something, so we didn't want to interrupt you, but we ended up converging on that bridge a little bit later on anyway, Keith.
That's interesting. Those bridges have really had some, we had an investigation one night, me and John, and we had just, I had all my toys. Good God, I just a slew of them, and kind of wanted to get some little funnels to where, I could get them to interact. And so we did have a static camera that was set up, and I started asking about just with recordings, how many have died in this area, and tell me. And you heard thousands, and I was like, okay, that's true. And then I said, does anyone know anything about the bridge? And we heard I died here, kind of a quick little swish of language. And I said, well, what happened? And from what I heard, treason. And I was like, okay, well, all right. And how many were hung? And they said 2 of us. I was like, okay. I started looking that up, and from what I can understand, they did end up catching 2 of the soldiers who had escaped or got away and ran off and they did in fact hang these soldiers there. And it was chilling to get that, especially when you get the information. But all of that is just such beauty, not only with history, but when you do connect with that, you can't help but just feel, if you just shut your eyes and feel around you, the sadness and the sudden death and and the screaming and the cry. And there are times people say they hear not only the gunfire, but cannon fire, just an echo of a boom off in the distance. And it's like, I don't know what else to call it, but like ghost gunfire. It just is that looping, it comes back around, and then there's that little gap, and then there you go.
Do you find, Tim, that you have, after your years of investigation, and there's power in numbers, so talking about these topics over and over, do you find that you have sensitivities in any way to these sorts of things, or are you drawn more toward the skeptical, analytical, technology side of things?
I always say I'm as psychic as a brick. And then Stephanie tells me that that's not true, that I can't be doing this and be around it as much as I can and not kind of tune in a little bit. And I have realized, like, over the years, I was very much like, hey, let me get some gadgets. Let me get some stuff here. And I realized over time that I was leaving so much of that behind when I was investigating and just going and having the experience. And, I still bring stuff along because we do a lot of investigations that are like events that are for people to come and they want to play with all that stuff and learn how to use it. So I do have it. But for the most part, I just walk around. I use EchoVox to do my communication. And so I'll just walk around with that and reach out and try to communicate with whatever's around. And then really, to me, it's just about having the experiences, because it doesn't matter what I get anymore. I always say I used to think I was going to be the person that was going to catch that piece of evidence that was going to convince the whole world that ghosts were real. And now I realize that that's not really my job. My job is to go out there and to help people have their first experience, or to have them have something profound happen, and to try to make sure that we are doing right by the spirits too. So I've just changed so much, and how much to me, it's not, I don't care if anybody ever sees anything that I do when it comes to investigations, because it's almost like it's a personal thing now, where it only, that's why I don't really go live from a lot of investigations, or like plan any, or make YouTube videos off of it. To me, it's kind of a one-on-one thing that until you experience it for yourself, you're never going to understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I think more people who, Keith and I talk about a lot of times the intention, what intention you're going into things with, and being intentional in your communication and the energy you put into it. And I really, truly believe in my heart of hearts that is reciprocated and respected by spirit. And you tend to get more just being in the moment and communicating earnestly than trying to, televise, for lack of a better term, your experience. And I know now, last you and I talked, you were doing kind of a speaking circuit over Halloween time, and you got to speak at a lot of different places and a lot of different topics, I assume. But can you tell us your favorite thing to talk about or lecture on, whether it's in person or on your show?
I think my favorite thing is the Bridgewater Triangle, because the more we talk about that, the more we get out there and share it, the more people come back and tell stories to us about it. And so this long-term project of chronicling what's been going on in the Triangle has evolved into, instead of just talking about the stuff that happened in the past, we've got real-time experiences and our own personal experiences to share. So that's always like, when I'm talking to libraries, they say, well, what kind of topics do you have to offer? And I send them this big, long email with every presentation that I can possibly give. And right in the middle of it, I bury that Bridgewater Triangle one, thinking, they're going to go to the first 4 or 5, which are the ones that I'm like really excited to talk about this year. And everybody zeroes in on that Bridgewater Triangle. So out of, I think I did like 18 appearances in October. Out of all of that, like 16 or 15 of them were all Bridgewater Triangle.
Wow.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you had your own experiences you mentioned about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, everything. See, I like to say that, the Bridgewater Triangle, for those who have seen the YouTube documentary or read the books or whatever it is, has some borders and definitions that I don't really necessarily agree with. I think that the triangle is a living, breathing thing that keeps expanding based on the stories and the experiences that we have. So I kind of expand that to include even like where I live and all the places that I investigate pretty much. So to me, it's a much wider swath. So I would say everything that's happened to me, like in southeastern New England, has happened within the Bridgewater Triangle.
Oh, okay. Well, can you mind sharing some of your experiences?
Yeah. Well,
For
I
those
think
who aren't in the area or as familiar. Could you share some?
So for me, like some of the real standout stuff that I've experienced was, the Lizzie Borden house. I've investigated there over 24 times, and I've been sworn at, I've been growled at, I've been scratched, I've been choked, I've been pinched, I've been punched, I've been everything, thrown up the stairs, thrown down the stairs. But there was a time that I was thrown against the wall by something that I couldn't see. And I had asked it to do something. I said, if you can do something more, show me what you can do. And it threw me up against the wall. So that was kind of that moment of where I realized, like, all right, you got to be careful how much you push. But that was pretty profound. I shook hands with a shadow person out in Western Massachusetts at the Houghton Mansion. That was very intense to actually have this thing grab my hand and pump my arm up and down in a handshake motion. And then probably the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me, and it's early in the show, but let's go there now. On the SLS camera, we caught what we think is a ghost sitting in a clawfoot bathtub. There was a bathtub in the basement, and in this bathtub, there's a stick figure sitting there taking a bath. And somebody was kind of rubbing its back and washing its back and everything. And my friend Jessica, who was with us, started saying, "Oh, are you a dirty boy? Oh, you're taking a bath? Oh," and you just see that hand come down under the water, and he starts washing something else. But he's moving his hand up and down just the right amount. And then she keeps going, and she's like, "Oh, you naughty boy." And so then he just starts going two-handed. And I brought the video up and showed everybody in the place. And I said, "I'm not going to tell you what's going on. Just tell me what you see." And as soon as it got to that part, the whole room cracked up. And I was like, okay, so it's not just me. So yes, if you go to YouTube and type in Spooky South Coast masturbating ghost, you can watch the video for yourself.
Well, this thing was dirty and needed to be clean. That's what
I don't think enough water could have gotten this thing clean.
Oh my gosh. Well, I want to ask you, based on, the different occurrences that you've heard about or witness reports, or maybe your own personal experiences, but have you had any experience with extraterrestrials in the Bridgewater Triangle area?
Every inch of my body wants to say no to that question. And certainly my mind wants to say no to that. Matt Moniz, my co-host on Spooky South Coast, he is not only a ufologist, but he's also an abductee himself. Oh, okay. And when I've shared with him some things that have happened to me when I was younger, he seems to be of the belief that perhaps, that was them taking me. I don't like to think that. I like to think it's something different. But I have seen a couple of UFOs on a couple of occasions that are certified just something that I could not explain. So there was probably the weirdest of them was I was driving home from Cape Cod. I had stopped by my landlord's house in Cape Cod, and I was coming home. And as I'm going down the hill near his house, I see what looks like a house in front of me, but it seemed like a reflection, like it was coming from behind me and kind of just showing up on my windshield. And I could clearly make out the front door and a bay window with a light on in the bay window. And as I'm going down the hill, I'm expecting that, because if this is behind me, that would be rising as I'm going down. And instead it didn't. Instead, it's kind of stayed with me and was like following me down. And when I got to the bottom of the hill, I was like, okay, well, there'll be a house at the end of the road, like staring up at me. That's what I'm seeing. And it wasn't there. And I was like, okay, what did I just see? And I turned the corner. And as I was driving down the road, this is now a main road, there's a salt marsh there. And when I got to the salt marsh, there was a couple standing outside their car looking up and pointing at the sky. And I pulled over and I said, "What are you guys looking at?" And they're like, "Did you see that?" I was like, "See what?" They're like, "It looked like a house in the sky." And I was like, "Nope, didn't see it," and kept on driving because I don't want to think about the possibility of aliens abducting me or taking me somewhere I don't want to go.
Wow. That's an amazing and interesting visual, though. A house.
It was a weird way to kind of represent itself, I think.
Yeah. Wow. Robin says that she had something happened when she lived in Arizona and has been checked on in Ohio a few times.
Wow.
Do people come to you, Tim, with do you take case reports of the Bridgewater Triangle and their experiences? Do people come to you for research purposes, or do you research those in yourself?
I try to research some things myself, not really as much as, because I just don't have the time in my schedule. So I don't really go out there and do a lot of investigations. It's mostly things that we do as events to help as fundraisers for these places. But people do report stuff to me all the time. People call into the radio show with stuff or send in emails. And if people do need an investigation, like I will set them up with somebody that can help, or on rare occasions, if I have the time, I'll join in. But for the most part, like I look at my job as being a researcher and a chronicler of the things that go on, and I leave the investigation to the people. Because as you know, if you're going to investigate and you say to somebody, "I'm here to help you," then that means when they need your help, you have to be there for them, and you have to be ready to drop everything and go help them, because that's why they're reaching out to you in the first place. And I just, A, I don't have that kind of schedule, and B, I really don't like going into people's houses that I don't know. It's very weird.
Yeah, I get that.
I had to do it. I had to do it for a living, and I tell you, the things you see, you know, fire service, EMS, police work, you're like, oh, would you like a glass of water? No, no, thank you. I'm fine.
You have a plastic cup that I can watch you take out of the package?
Right, exactly.
Roaches and bugs. And I'm like, no, thank you very much. No, I'm
good. How about cryptids, Tim? Do you have a favorite, or have you had any experiences with cryptids at all?
So I don't think that I've had any experiences with any. We do have a lot that are reported in the Bridgewater Triangle. So we have, and some of them are kind of, I know this sounds weird, but mundane when it comes to cryptids. So yeah, we have the Bigfoot sightings. We have the giant cats that don't exist in this area, giant snakes that don't exist in this area, but people have reported seeing them. But we also have legends like the Native American thunderbird, this like man-sized bird that an actual police officer saw standing in the middle of the road in the 1970s. So we get stories like that. But probably one of the, I don't know if I would call it a cryptid per se, kind of more of a mythological creature, but we also have the legend of the Pukwudgie, which is a Native American trickster type entity that for the most part were just kind of benevolent things for a long time, until one day all the Pukwudgies banded together and they killed the creator god Mashop, and he was a giant. Him and his wife were giants, and they lived in a pond called Assawamsett Pond. And the Pukwudgies showed up on the shores of the pond. They took Mashop and his wife and they held them under the water and drowned them. And from that day on, the Pukwudgies have kind of been evil. And people will report encountering them even to this day. And the stories that they have of these encounters are just very freaky. So I don't know if I would call that a cryptid per se, but it's certainly not something that I want to encounter out there in the woods.
Right. Well,
that's an interesting thing that you say woods, because that's one of the things I wanted to ask about. So you think of all these cryptids, Bigfoots and the big cat and then the bird type man, and you think, where do all these creatures go? That's my first question. And then my second question is, I can't help but bring this subject up. What's your thoughts on portals being here on Earth that they just simply vanish into, and that's why we don't see them unless they exit out of this energy type force or place?
Well, let me preface this by saying that I worked on Ghost Stalkers as the writer and the researcher, aka Portal Hunters, because they were out looking for a portal in every episode. That was the network's fault. But I think that there is the possibility that there are some portals, or what John Keel called window areas, and the Bridgewater Triangle is a giant one of those.
Exactly.
So these beings can kind of flip in and out of our existence if that's the case. But I also think that if they are physical beings, we do have a couple of places within the Bridgewater Triangle that are hotspots for activity where these things could be, where people don't get to. That one of those is the Freetown State Forest. It's a very large swath of land where there's been everything from, UFOs seen there, ghosts, Bigfoot, cryptid creatures, Pukwudgies, to actual true crime cases, horrible murders, cult activity, mafia, body dumps, all kinds of things going on. And then we also have the Hockomock Swamp, which is a place where the Native Americans wouldn't even go. Hockomock is Wampanoag or Algonquin for place where the spirits dwell. So this is a place that they knew better than to go into. And a lot of people think that this is kind of the heart of the Bridgewater Triangle. What's interesting about this is we're putting in a commuter train line here in southeastern Massachusetts. For the first time in forever, we're going to have rail service down here. And right now they're using an old diesel route. But then the eventual plan is to build a shorter electric route from the South Coast into Boston. And that's going to run right through the Hockomock Swamp. So I keep saying, well, I want to be on the first train that goes through that because I want to look and see when Bigfoot sees us and starts flipping us off as we ride by on the train, you know?
Right. Wow. That's so interesting. Wow. That's neat.
Well, and even so, when we talk about portals here on Earth, what is the possibilities when we speak of triangles that there's some sort of a vortex or some sort of that is in fact how planes are seen, and then that pilots say he vanished. He just gone. He's off the radar. So, radar systems and that track all of that, and they know, and then they say, well, he was in flight, he was at 31,000 feet, and then he's gone.
Have you experienced anything like that too, Tim? Like any gear malfunctions or technological malfunctions, like when you're in the triangle investigating, have you?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely had weird things happen. There was a day, and it might be a little bit outside the triangle definition, but again, I don't really give it hard borders. So,
Sure.
But we were at the S.K. Pierce Mansion out in Gardner, Mass. And everybody that was trying to get there for this event we were doing, everybody ran into problems with their GPS where nobody could really find the house. And one poor guy, Rick, he ended up circling around for hours trying to find it. And he ended up being late for the event because nothing would work for him. So we have had some of those type of things that have happened. But I also think that there's, some influence that we can have over those things without even realizing it too. So if we think that we're in a place where that type of anomaly might happen, it could be us that's causing it.
I agree with you there. There are so many things from a metaphysical standpoint that power and numbers can alter. So, spirit boards and, floating tables and all kinds of things. We can do amazing things with our own energy.
Yeah. So, and I talk about that in my presentations where I say, I kind of give the different definitions of ghosts. And one of them is that it could very well just be a thought form, something that we're creating with our own minds. And people get upset because, they say, well, I'd much rather think that a ghost is a spirit of a dead person. I don't want to think that it's us doing it with our minds. I'm like, why? That has far more practical applications in this existence than worrying about what happens to us when we die. And I always use the same joke. I'd much rather think that I can make the remote fly into my hand from across the room than to think that my dead grandmother sees me when I'm in the shower.
Oh my God.
Go eat your sandwich.
That joke went to a place I was not mentally prepared for to go.
Okay.
But, I mean, I get.
How do you think I felt?
Granny, don't stare at me.
I get.
Can our loved ones see us naked?
It's a good point. I mean, we can do a lot of powerful things with our energy, including healing. So I think that you're right. That's an interesting premise for ghosts and things like that. But I think that's awesome and a great idea. And Robin says that she has to study the remote trick. She wants to learn how to do that.
Me too.
Robin Kell has got an interesting home herself, and her spirits there, which are really active. I mean, that home, those people pass there. They love that place, and they know who Robin is, But she's asked before. Of course, she's got amazing video. If you happen to speak with her, and she'll share it with you. But she's actually asked before, like, well, how many portals are here? Because they say, how did you get into the house? And they're like, the portal. And she's like, okay. And she says, how many are here? Is there? And they go, 2. And she says, I know the one in my room. And then they say, and downstairs. They said, and downstairs. And I mean, I got to tell you, Tim, you're talking about some video that's like, from a camera that films it. She has some that, and she's been on our show before, that after you see this, I would say, going on, from my experiences, seeing video that's been sent, and somebody I know that's credible, she was at the bash. I don't know if you got to meet her, but it's compelling. It's so compelling that it's like, what I'm seeing, what else could it be? And then you're like, well, it can't be. That's exactly what I'm seeing, but it's happening. But wait a second, is that possible? And so, wow, it's just, when you see it, you're like, okay, that's beyond. That's like, wow. And even when they say it and then they do it, it's like, okay, well, you just basically showed me what you were telling me, and thank you so much. So,
what do you think? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Kelly.
I was just going to ask Tim, what do you think is an area of the paranormal that needs, like, I know all areas need deep exploration, but something that you think people often glaze over that maybe we should deep dive into a little bit more, or there's more to investigate into?
This is going to sound really strange, but I think a lot of people in the paranormal need to learn what the scientific method is. They need to learn like what actual peer review is. They need to learn that when somebody makes a suggestion to you or tells you that something might not be what you think it is, that it's coming from a place of learning and education and not from haters or people that are jealous. I think that's the biggest problem is we spend so much time worrying about how we're going to interact with the dead or with the extraterrestrials or with these creatures that supposedly don't exist, that none of us are really focusing on how we're going to interact with each other and with other human beings and people that care about this pursuit. And the problem is you get a bunch of people that just develop, I don't want to say, well, no, I will say it's egos versus people who have insecurities. And it just becomes this whole, because let's face it, we were all kind of the nerdy kids, right? Like not a lot of us were the most popular kid in high school. So we're used to having to, fend for ourselves. And we're not used to having that interpersonal dynamic where all of a sudden we're the center of attention. So it's caused a lot of people struggles with how to interact with one another. And that's what I think is holding the paranormal back more than anything. It's not that we don't have the right device. It's not that we don't have the right technique. It's that we don't really bother to learn from each other and work together toward this because we're so wrapped up in who gets to do what and who gets what opportunity that the paranormal hasn't been about the paranormal for a long time. And I say that, in the capital P grand community sense. And I don't even like to use the word community anymore because community implies that you live together and amongst one another.
Right.
And instead, it's just more like I don't know. It's like you're intentionally trying to take other people down, hoping that will lift you up. And anybody that's ever done that to anybody knows you don't get lifted up by taking somebody else down.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're very right.
Yes, that was well said. I can't even, and especially you went back to the first of your, communication of the, kind of the scientific approach. I kind of wrote something myself that I came up with is to try to, when I did some speeches myself and was about evidence-based practice and, what we document when we go somewhere, that in fact we're able to share that with other colleagues, and then they say, well, this is kind of what I see, and then you're able to say, well, this was the size of the room, the atmospheres, the HVAC system, it was a very hot day outside, so many things that go down in a very finite list of all the things that you have, and then you're able to say, okay, well, this is what we encountered inside this space, and there were two of us in the room, and yet there's three in this picture, and neither one of us know who that is over there in the corner, and but you lead to that and you document that, and then it leads to others saying, okay, well, that makes sense, and people, you're right, they do get, I don't just downright offended by the fact of when you come across and as a colleague, you're trying to help them stay credible or maybe become credible, I should say. And then they're like, well, you weren't there. And I said, well, I understand that, but what you're told me and what I've seen and what in my own opinion, is what, you share. And it's sad that others like you shared, just get downright defensive, even, to the point of wanting to go to fisticuffs, and it's like, we're just, this is something we're just trying to learn and do, and maybe help others. But
yeah, we actually started a Facebook group years ago. Myself and my friend Dave Francis, who's a great investigator from up here in Massachusetts, we started a Facebook group that we called Paranormal Peer Review. And the idea behind it was anybody could submit something that they weren't sure about, and we could kind of all take a look at it with a critical eye and discuss it. And we had, like, as moderators in this group, we had John Zaffis, we had Rosemary Ellen Guiley, we had people that were like experienced in this and basically, the idea is you want to share with people what you learned from the mistakes that you made so that they don't have to make those same mistakes. So we'd be telling people, okay, listen, I think that might be cigarette smoke, or that looks like it could be the camera strap, or all these things as possibilities. And we just started getting hit with, well, you're just a hater. You're just jealous. And I was like, I don't think that Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who's written like 6,000 books on the paranormal, is jealous about your orb photo. She's doing just okay on her own. She doesn't need your orb photo that you think is Uncle Chester when it's actually just a bug. So I don't know why people took it so personally. And that's kind of when I said, you know what? I have to change the way I do things. So now somebody comes up to me at a convention and they're like, look at this orb. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, that's my Aunt Millie. And I'm like, okay, all right. Well, you would know better than I would.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just want to make sure that I don't, that it's, bug or moisture or dust. But if you think it's Aunt Millie, you were there, I wasn't. Go on with it, because it's easier than getting into pissing contests with people that you're never going to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and speaking of photos, I know there's a lot of different areas of evidence that comes upon your plate in all of your research. Is there one particular type of evidence that you found that you have the most, you kind of lean the most to, like, oh, this could be something a little more than others, like whether it be video or photo or audio? Is there one particular area that makes you question more than the others?
For me, it's audio 100%. And I think that that's probably because I'm an audio guy. I'm a radio guy. It's what I'm most comfortable with. So I think that because of, just the nature of my job, I'm more tuned into hearing things as much as my hearing is probably going. But I think that is the easiest way for me to, because you can show me a photo and I'm going to be like, what am I supposed to be looking at? What? Hold on. That, because I don't see it. I'm not very observant. For a guy that spent years as a reporter, I'm not very observant about things. But when it comes to hearing it, I can zero in on it, and I can hear things that maybe sometimes other people can't hear. And so that's why I was always drawn to electronic voice phenomenon. And now more than anything, I'm drawn to using Echovox because my ear has become attuned to what that sounds like, and I can pick out some pretty good things.
Yeah. Well, and, kind of on the tech side of things, for those who use Echovox watching or rewatching or in the chat, can you give them any tips that you found very helpful to use when you use that app?
So the one thing that I can tell you is join the Facebook group, Echovox users, and converse with the people that are in there. There's people that are in there every day using this. Some people using it in their own homes, and they have tried every possible variation of the settings. And so they all have suggestions about what settings work for them. There's such a wide variety of ways that you can adjust it that, you've just got to keep experimenting. But the one thing that I will say is if you are somebody that wants to do the Estes method, stop using the Spirit Box, the Ghost Radio, the Frank's Box, whatever. Stop using those. Start using Echovox, because we have had incredible things going on through that just blow me away. And I find that there aren't the false positives that there are with a Spirit Box. So I would just recommend that anybody you got to spend time with it. You got to really tune your ear in to listen, but it's worth it. It's worth the investment of your time.
Now, let me ask about that, because I've never. Now, is the Echo Box something modernized where you can get it as an app? That
it is an app. So it was created by Danny Roberge, Danny Big Beard. He created this as, I think originally he was working on a guitar tuning app or something along those lines. And he started to realize like these applications for it. We've actually pulled this thing apart. It only contains human phonetics. So it doesn't have any words in it. It has 6 different banks, and every one of those banks has all the phonetic sounds of human speech. It cycles through them. and it has 6 different channels coming in with it. So basically, the mathematical probability of it stopping on 2 syllables to make a word would be pretty slim. And on top of that, you'll get multiple syllable words. You'll get full sentences. You'll get paragraphs that come out of this thing. And it's incredible the way that it delivers. And he just keeps improving on that formula. He actually just came out with one called Ultravox Pro that it's a little bit different. It does have some of the ghost box elements, and you can record your own words and everything to put into it. But it's just changing the game when it comes to bringing these things out and interacting with spirits, because they're coming through like never before. And I think it's because they realize that this is a clear opportunity to communicate, as opposed to, waiting around on a ghost box for a certain word to come across the radio for them to grab and throw at you. Whereas with this, they can make their own words and kind of have themselves heard.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Oh, wow. That's neat about his new one. I hadn't heard of that. That's neat. I use EchoVox a lot when I assist with the teen paranormal camp in the summertime. And we kind of, for that, I like that you can slow it down in the phonetic mode, slowing it down, and then it's quiet. And then when something does come through, it seems that it's more relevant because it's not as all the white noise. And I'm like you, where I hear everything. I hear like a bat, and the spirit box sometimes gives me a headache. I mean, because I'm hearing every single chirp and beep and everything, and I don't care for that. So I agree with you. I do like EchoVox better, but I'll have to check out the new one too.
I knew I was done with spirit boxes pretty early on. A little humble brag here. We were the first people to ever use a ghost box on television. We did a show called Conversations with a Serial Killer over in the UK, and they came to Boston, and they were looking to speak with Albert DeSalvo, the supposed Boston Strangler. And so they talked to the people who were renting an apartment in the building where he killed one of his victims, not the apartment where he did it, because they couldn't get into that one, but one downstairs. And they have us all set up around a table, and we turn this thing on, and the host, who is a medium, just became obsessed with this once we turned it on. And he's asking, like, Albert, can you tell us where you were born? And you hear dip, 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 Boston. And he's like, oh my God, Boston. That's where he was born. Albert, where did you die? Dip, 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 Boston. And I was like, oh my God. So like he kept getting these what he thought were results. But I'm thinking, we're in Boston. Mm-hmm. We're literally a block away from Fenway Park as a Red Sox game is going on. The radio is going to be saying Boston constantly all the time. So I think that that's a false positive.
Right.
But he just kept buying into all of that. And I was like, all right. And then we have had weird things come through a ghost box. I've had it call me by my name. I've had it call Jeff Belanger was with me one time, and it was referring to him by his first and last name. And then my son, who's 19 now, when he was 7, I took him on his one and only ghost hunt because he wanted to get into this building that we were investigating, this tavern from 1690. And we were using the ghost box, and he was asking questions like, are you naked? And, are you cold? Like silly stuff. And then he said, are you dead? And then clear as day, it comes through with a big F-U, only uncensored. And he looks at me and he says, Dad, I know that they're not supposed to say that on the radio. I want to get out of here. And so that was kind of I think that was the last time that I ever really used a ghost box kind of exclusively. Now it's just all EchoVox all the time.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What do you think about, you mentioned about the Estes method before. What do you think about that?
I find it very interesting because I've done it on numerous occasions. I've had a lot of great stuff come through. We actually used it in Plymouth, Massachusetts with Stephanie, who is a psychic medium. So she does have a little bit more extra perception than most people. But she had on her own headphones, her own device. Sitting next to her was Ty Gowan from Haunt Me. He had on his own device and his own headphones. They're sitting next to each other. And not only are they answering questions from everybody else that's in the room, but they were actually talking to each other and finishing each other's sentences. So it was just such an amazing experience that I realized that there's definitely something to this. And I just keep trying to push it a little bit more to see what else can come out of it.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah, that is really neat. I find with that method sometimes I'd rather people know, especially like doing different public events. I think that's not something that I don't think that's an amateur exercise, is I guess what I'm trying to say, because if you don't, you're just really open to all of that energy and you don't really have that filter. So I think it's really interesting to take some people who are more familiar to do that. Because there's been several sessions I've been part of kind of monitoring, and, the public members that are there, it can be kind of distressing at times with things that they're experiencing or even afterward. And it's not all the time, but I've seen it a lot with that method, and even feeling physically off afterwards. So I think it's something that when you have more experienced investigators doing that, I think it's neat that you got those results of talking back and forth. I just something that feel like it's something you have to have a
Well,
system.
and Stephanie and I argue about it all the time because when we're doing events together, she doesn't want me to let people do Estes method. She's like, if you want to do it, you can go under. But I was like, well, I want them to experience this so they don't think that I'm cheating this, and so that they know what the experience is. And so we kind of go back and forth on whether or not we should let people do it. But the very first time I ever did it was in the Princess Room of the Mount Washington Hotel in New Hampshire. And I'm sitting there with the headphones on, and I had to use EchoVox because the spirit box that people had, my ears are so like attuned to being able to hear outside of headphones because I'm in the radio business. So I'll have headphones on all the time, but if somebody comes in the room to talk to me, I need to know what they're saying. So I kind of can hear around headphones, and I couldn't all the extra noise with the spirit box. I couldn't zero in. So I said, let me try it with the Echo Box. And because I knew that could go louder, and it did. And that made all the difference. And so I'm sitting there with my eyes closed, and I've got the blindfold on and the headphones on. And to me, I envisioned what looked like a long hallway. And every one of these little phonetic sounds that I heard come out of Echo Box was one of these doors opening up and somebody popping out and saying, "Yep, yep." And so I'm just walking down this hallway trying to see if anybody can make a word. It was a very strange experience. And when I was done, I told everybody, I said, I wasn't sure that I wasn't going to go insane while I had those headphones on. Like I felt like I was going to lose a grip on reality. And so that is a dangerous thing. And if you're going to put people into that situation, that's why we make everybody sign a waiver before they start one of our events, just in case.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's really smart. What were you going to say? Oh, I thought you were going to say something, Keith.
No, I've got to be a part of some of the Estes method. We were way up in that Paracon, way up, all the way north. The one that they had last year, and so many people couldn't get to
Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan.
Yeah, I was one of those people that had trouble. I was sleeping on the airport floor.
It was. They were. Tim Shaw was one of the ones. He's like, this is.
I was with Tim. Yeah,
Tim was like, we're not even going to get there.
Tim and Zaffa slept in a bathroom.
Yeah, and they were. Yeah, they said it was just terrible. Mm-hmm. And so, well, we went on a ship that's there. That's based there in that little town. And we did an investigation down there, and we did it. And I actually went to the galley, and because I had an SLS and an EDI and some other cool stuff. And they were like, "Hey, Keith, why don't you go in there, and then you can have a group of people kind of there." And what was so cool about it is I said, "Well, if there's anybody here in this kitchen," so there's one guy's there, and he's doing this, and somebody says, "What is he?" I said, "He's stirring. He's cooking something." And I says, "Do you have a sous chef?" And all of a sudden, this other one came up, and he's kind of by him, and then he went off, and I was like, it's just, people beat up the SLS and a lot of times, but and my reflections with it, I've actually had some things that were like, I had one time that was a little girl who in a group, I said, "Does anybody else want to interact with a family member?" Even, and she raised her hand and was crying, and her friend said, "Well, her dad died about 2 weeks ago, suddenly." And I said, "Okay, well, let's try this." And we got to talking, and he actually came through the device speaking. And I had the SLS, and it was perfect. It was facing out on a dark area where there's no one there. Everyone was behind us. And sure enough, this man was there and kind of very stoic looking. And as he came up, he bowed. He went over like this. he bent over and he had his hand, and the girl just started totally crying. And the friend said, every time that he walks up to people, he bows. And when he departs, he bows. And I've said that to many people about the SLS. I said, in its context, I think there's times where it's certainly intriguing if it's used appropriately. But there again, it does need to be to where you make sure that all the absolutes are away. You can't be facing it in a crowd and there's all these humans there and then say, look, in between those two people, it's a spirit. Well, that's kind of, scratched from the start. So
what do you think about SLS, Tim?
I do think, like exactly what Keith's saying, you get a lot of false positives with it, but then you get those profound moments where you say, this has to be something more. So that same night that we got the masturbating ghost on it, we were in the music room of that mansion, and there was what looked like a stick figure standing there playing the violin.
Wow.
And so we had somebody sit down at the piano next to him, and because there was one person out of all of us that were there who actually knew how to play. And so he started playing the piano. And whatever he played, this thing was playing the violin and keeping time and tapping its foot. So if he sped up, it would speed up. And if he slowed down, it would slow down. If he stopped, it would stop. And it switched between playing the violin to then playing the floor bass to then playing the trombone. And we're just watching this go on for a good 10 or 15 minutes with him completely keeping time. Now, that is a direct interaction with the living person. So to me, there was something there that wanted to interact with him. And this technology was able to map that and show it for us on the screen.
Didn't you say you got your hand shake with something that was a shadow figure that
was a shadow person where
you use SLS?
This is way before SLS even existed.
Okay.
Yeah. This was 2012 maybe. So we actually, for a while, I was running an event company with Jeff Belanger called Legend Trips. And for a long time, we had the only other SLS system besides the one that Zach had. So Bill Chappell gave one to Zach, and then he gave one to Jeff. And so we used to have this system that we used to have to lug up the stairs, and Jeff would have to carry up like 5 pieces of equipment to hook it all up, and it wasn't portable. And that got some really incredible interaction. And that didn't get the same false positives that the ones do now, because the ones that are made now are made not with the developer cameras, but with the regular run-of-the-mill Xbox Connect that anybody can buy. So because Microsoft used to let Bill buy those cameras, the developer cameras, and they stopped him from doing it. And we had to give him back the one that we had because it was their proprietary tech. It turned into a whole thing. But now the ones that everybody make now, while they get some good things, they also get a lot of false positives.
Yeah, that was when I saw that on the show with Zach. I'm quite the nerd tech as well, and I mean, I was like that quick. Like the next day, I got on there with Bill and was like, "Want one? What is it?" And he actually messaged back and he kind of explained it. And he says, "But they're," and he kind of said, "But they're not cheap." And I was like, "What do I need to do? Who do I need to pay?" And he says, "Okay." And but I got one, an original Bill Chappell, and that's the first one I got that I've had and still have. And still enjoy getting some of the very best documentation from like amazing locations and I've actually set up EDIs and then have the SLS and ask the spirits, can you reach out and touch this device? So it actually makes them, it encourages them certainly. If they're going to do it, they have to have it in a way that it's going to activate, at least be around it and get a drop in pressure or something. And sure enough, I see this arm and a hand come across. And when it got to it and it was around it, it went off. And I was like, okay, there you go. It's 2 pieces of equipment. None of us touched it. There's nothing else to make the EDI go off. It was at base. And I was like, okay, there's a punt for SLS, and EDI is already, well established as a credible piece of equipment with everything it provides. So, I love them. I think it's a great thing. So,
yeah. Well, speaking of great things, what great things do you have coming up, Tim? Anything?
Oh, do tell.
into the fall and winter season that you want to share with everyone?
Tim Weisberg
Yeah.
on tour 2024. Get your tickets now; they will sell out.
Well, actually, I'm pretty excited. If anybody's in the Detroit area or can get to the Detroit area by Thursday, by Friday, we're actually going to be investigating the Eloise Asylum.
Oh,
Oh, nice.
This is the place
killing
that
me.
Stephanie and
I've been
Scott.
trying to get there for years.
Well,
Back
this
when
is your
Jeff
chance.
and Jeff and Todd were there with Detroit
This was
Paranormal.
Stephanie and Scott, as I mentioned. They have that show Secrets of the Asylum, so they put together this event and they asked me if I wanted to come and join and take part in it. So we'll be there this Friday. So I'm very excited, especially after seeing the show and seeing everything that happened to them there. And then in December, I'm going to be returning to one of my new favorite places, the Emory Estate, just outside of Boston, which is a great place that Christy Parrish is using the paranormal to help restore, just like she did with the Oliver Estate, which you've seen on Kindred Spirits and Paranormal Lockdown. So now they're doing the same thing with the Emory Estate. And the spirits there have really gotten to know me and interacted with me. The last person that lived there died in 2010, so they know what we're doing. They understand what we're doing, and they help us out on these investigations. And Reverend Billy Graham used to stay in this house, and the last time we were there, we were using that Ultravox Pro, and we got what sounded like a whole sermon coming from the Billy Graham room. So I can't wait to get back there December 9th and see if we can kind of continue some of that conversation.
Well, I've absolutely got to get with you, Tim, because the Eloise just holds so much. Some of the last couple of shows that I've watched that people have been there, they have had the most amazing investigations. I mean, just boom, 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 room to room, boom, bounce. Hey, over here. Oh, come over here. Oh, look. So I'm gonna, all I want for Christmas is the Eloise. Okay. So I'm gonna be, if you can let those two, they know me. They both know me. And I would love to just reach out and, and say, hey, in fact, it'd be super cool to have me and Kelly. We're wanting to do some stuff in 2024. And that way kind of reach out and say, hey, folks, we're here. Tim Weisberg's here and some others, and just make it a really special event, because the Eloise is chock full of some amazing history and lots of activity. So that I would love that for 2024.
And speaking of activity, how can people find you, Tim? Online.
Tim Weisberg.
The easiest way is to follow me on social media at Tim Weisberg. I beat the flute player to most of the social media channels, so you can catch me there. And of course, SpookySouthCoast.com. You can hear Spooky South Coast wherever you get your podcast from. I also have a show called Midnight Society on midnight.fm. That is a membership based, but that was the show that I took over after I took over for Art Bell, and then I got fired from that show, and because I wouldn't push the COVID isn't real conspiracy theory they wanted me to push. So, I'm all over the place, but really social media is the best way to get a hold of me and to keep up with everything that I'm doing.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Well, we are so thankful that you would come on with us tonight. So thanks for spending a little bit of time with us and sharing all that you did. And I hope everyone who is in the chat or catches the show or rewatches, make sure that they follow all of your endeavors and shows too, because as entertaining as you are to know and as well-spoken as you are, I think you'll hopefully pick up a lot of new viewers. So thank you.
Tim, do you know Wes Coleman?
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
This guy, I mean, you can't help but like the guy. I mean, all around good guy. He's from Canada, but we're not gonna give him too much of a guff over that. But he's an all around good guy. If you've never met the guy, you should meet him. Master of many trades, known for none, but he is an all around good guy. He's in the chat, and
he says he eats steak, so he's all right in my book.
He's the one, that said he likes them blackened rattlesnake. So he's gonna be at the Rattlesnake Roundup in Texas this year. So,
and are you coming back to the bash this year, Tim?
I believe that is the plan. Yeah,
Tim Weisberg, folks.
Good.
That they've got some wrestling plans going on, and
I've heard
I'm a
about
ring announcer,
that.
So
nice.
Yeah, a ring announcer.
Okay.
I would, man. I'd get to something with that. That would be that'd be pretty cool. Yeah. I wonder who's going to be there. That's going to be cool if they had some pretty good names pop in there. Tim Weisberg.
I said, listen, the only way I'm going to be the ring announcer is if somebody wants to beat me up, because that's what used to happen to me every time in the federation that I announced for here. I used to get beat up every show. So
Yeah, you
Well,
can't touch a ring announcers. They're not
all in
really
good
allowed to
fun.
be touched.
I
Referees,
earned it. I earned every bit of it. So
referees and ring announcers are no touch. You can't. That's the rule for those. But folks, if
Aw.
just Tim Weisberg, give it up. I mean,
Yep.
what a nice guy all around. I will tell you that I'm happy to be his friend. I'm actually blessed to get to be his friend, because after many years of hocus pocus and smoke in the skies, he stayed my friend, and in the end, shook my hand and say, "Hey, it's nice to meet you, and keep doing what you're doing." So I got a ton of respect for the man, because I'll be very honest, folks, you don't find very many people like that say, "I don't care about anything else." Getting to know you and knowing who you are, that's what it's about. And I hardly got any words for that, but just respect. That goes a incredibly long ways in this world, folks. So,
and likewise, I look at it like this: there's enough bad people doing bad work, so stick with the good people that are doing the good work.
Agreed.
And God
Agreed.
bless. I appreciate that, and I'm blessed to have good people. So, if you
Well,
can hang out in the
we're
green
gonna
room,
we're gonna wrap the show with all three of us tonight, and say goodnight and say happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
yes,
And maybe we could have you come back on again, Tim, sometime. Maybe.
Sure. Yeah.
Tim
Wonderful.
Weisberg, folks.
Yep. Well, everybody, from Keith and Tim and I, we will see you in 2 weeks. Happy Thanksgiving and good night.